The Prix Galien is a welcome initiative to stimulate creative research and promote excellence. Barack Obama. The Galien Awards ceremony is considered the equivalent of the Oscars night for the innovators in the labs and awards every year the best pharmaceutical product, the best biotechnology product, the best medical technology, best digital health, best incubator accelerator, best startup.
This is the right event, on the right issue, at the right time.
I thank His Excellency, the President, for bringing Prix Galien to Africa, and I look forward to the day when we will celebrate an African winner of the Prix Galien.
I'm particularly grateful to receive this award.
The awards are among the highest honors in science and commerce because they lead to improvement in the human condition.
The Prix Galien Awards recognize the world's brightest minds and most innovative companies. They are a true celebration of the hard work required to produce life-changing interventions.
That is what makes us optimistic about the future.
Congratulations to all of you.
Make a difference. Join the Galien Foundation.
Welcome to the Galien Foundation Week of Innovation webinars in New York. My name is Alexandra Moons. I'm Director of Product Marketing at H1 and the moderator for today's session. The objective of this week is to provide additional content and background for our largest annual event, the Prix Galien USA Awards, to be held this Thursday in New York in conjunction with our annual Galien Forum of speakers representing top scientific experts and leaders in global health. We've developed this new webinar series to give our nominees for Best Pharmaceutical, Best Biotech, Best MedTech, Best Digital Health Solution, and Best Startup, Accelerator, Incubator greater visibility in describing their journey of medical discovery. This year's Galien USA Awards has a record of 147 nominees for our 6 categories from 126 companies covering 15 diverse therapeutic areas, ranging from cancer, cardiology, neuroscience to infectious diseases, very rare genetic disorders, and vaccines. Many of these conditions will benefit from digital solutions that help patients manage their conditions. We will be looking closely at the products in all 5 categories throughout the week. In the Best Digital Health category, which is our focus for today, we will be holding 2 webinars due to the large number of products representing this important field. This webinar is devoted to the 7 nominees in disease management. Our discussion today relates to the central question: in what ways can these new digital technologies contribute to better outcomes for patients at less cost to overburdened health systems? The webinar includes some time for audience questions, which can be forwarded to myself using the link provided on your screen. Let me start by introducing the nominee representatives who are joining us for this webcast right now. Also, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about each nominated product, you can find a company-provided statement linked in the chat, which is available for viewing during this webcast. So first of all, I've got Simon Raslingham, CEO and Chairman of Behold.ai, who's representing the Red Dot V2 clinical analysis software product. We've got Ashken Vaziri, founder and CEO of Biosensics, representing the BioDigit Home product. Then we've got Michael Abramoff, founder and executive chairman of Digital Diagnostics, representing the IDX-DR, an autonomous AI diagnostic system. We've got Nicholas Krull, the VP of Precision Medicine at Extensia, with Extensia's end-to-end AI-driven precision medicine platform. We've got Michelle Longmire, co-founder and CEO of Medable, with the Medable decentralized clinical trials platform. We've got Mathieu Leclerc-Chevalet, the CEO of Therapixel, with the Mammo Screen products. And we've got Jamie Strauss, the Chief Clinical Officer at Visit.ai, with the Contra-CT products. Now, to kick our discussion off, I'd like to ask each of our product representatives to briefly address my following question here. and I'll call you individually to answer the question a little bit at your own pace. So in what ways did the digital technology represent a breakthrough? And how significant was the level of unmet medical need? And if the product is also targeting a specific disease state, why did your company choose to focus on this one in particular? And let's start off maybe with Mathieu. Could you tell us a little bit about this for your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Alexandra. Actually, we started with the unmet need in mind. The unmet need is breast cancer, and we are in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so that's why it's even more meaningful. We recognize that many women in the world, but also in the US, do not have the access to this screening that enables to save more than 90% of women who have breast cancer. Breast cancer can be cured if it's caught on time. It's caught on time if they can participate to a screening program. And the particular issue in the US is the radiologists are absolutely overwhelmed by the number of images they have to read. And also, there are so few of them that, contrary to Europe, where we come from, women have only a single read of their mammogram, meaning that less cancers are being caught on time. So with this very crying need, we started to develop an AI that can help the radiologist confirm their choices or make sure they didn't miss something they could have seen. And by that, we won in 2017 a global contest organized by IBM. We're the first amongst 1,200 participants. And from that, we developed a full AI that can assist the radiologist to read faster, but also to find more cancer and sooner. So why this disease area? As I said, this is a big thing. 40 million mammograms are being taken every year in the US only. So that's why we chose this big area to go big. Also, the low and emerging countries have also crying access needs. So we have a solution that can be deployed easily, absolutely everywhere in the world.
Fantastic, thank you. Jamie, could you also tell us a little bit about this from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So we too started with the unmet need. So at the time of inception of Viz, we really wanted to focus on stroke care. It was a time where there was significant breakthroughs and advances with treatment, with mechanical thrombectomy. However, there was truly still breakdown in stroke workflow and identifying these patients, especially out in the community setting. Stroke continued at that point to still be the 5th leading cause of death, which it still is nowadays in the US, and is the #1 cause of disability in the world. From the breakthrough perspective, we really pioneered the way with the FDA to receive the first ever de novo pathway for computer-aided triage for our LVO stroke detection algorithm. And what our technology did was leverage AI-based workflow triggers to really facilitate clinical action and making sure the right clinicians were connected with the right patient information in that patient's medical moment of truth to help with decision-making. We know in stroke time is brain, so every minute a patient is having a stroke, they lose about 1.6 million neurons. And when you think about that, it equates down to 3.6 years of life every hour. And when a patient's having the stroke, they really need to be connected with the right specialist to help move them through the care pathway. We were able to really show significant improvement in time to treatment, which led to reduction in disability and improvement in patient outcomes. And because of that impact we were able to show in the real world, we were able to be awarded the first ever CMS new technology add-on payment. And what that allowed for, whenever this technology was being used as a breakthrough technology, the hospitals and health systems were allowed to receive additional reimbursement based on the improved clinical outcome that we made. The platform has really expanded stroke care out into the community setting, where we're connecting the community physicians with stroke experts and help driving clinical decision for patients. We brought in that safety net. So if an image is done, that image is automatically routed to the appropriate stroke specialist to help drive that decision making. And with the new technology add-on payment, this allowed for a broader adoption out into the community because these smaller facilities were able to adopt the technology with the additional reimbursement. Over the past 2 years, the work that we've done with our clinical partners and our customers, as well as CMS, because of the outcomes demonstrated by VIS-LVO, CMS has recalibrated the stroke-related DRG weight. So now for every time that VIS is used, that DRG is adjusted to include the cost of the technology, which allows more centers to adopt this and more patients to have access to this care. We're deployed across multiple sites for stroke, but we've also have approval for US FDA and CE mark for neurovascular, PE and aortic to bring that same level of care and safety net to patients out in the community.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. Ashkan, could you also share a little bit your view on where you guys are sitting from a product perspective within this industry and where the unmet need came from? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so our company has pioneered the use of wearable devices in medical applications. Specifically, we developed a fall detection technology that is currently used by hundreds of thousands of users, has saved many lives, something that we are very proud of. We also developed the first FDA-registered wearable devices for assessment of gait and balance. And as our company evolved further, we included digital assessments to enable essentially monitoring motor, speech, and cognitive function using a single platform. These developments has evolved to solutions that are widely used in clinical trials to measure the efficacy of drugs, also to comprehensive remote monitoring and telehealth solution, specifically for neurological disorders. Now, remote monitoring solutions are somewhat ubiquitous in some areas of medicine, such as cardiovascular diseases, but neurological disorders specifically are very challenging in that regard because they are multifaceted diseases. They typically impact more than one clinical domain, impact, for example, motor, speech, and cognition. So it is quite challenging to develop systems that are applicable to a range of neurological disorders. There are also symptoms fluctuate a lot during the day. So we essentially focused on creating such a solution, specifically focused on monitoring multiple clinical domains related to many neurological disorders in order to reduce travel barriers, minimize caregiver burdens, and improve access to clinical care as well as clinical trials in neurological disorders.
Wow, okay, great. Nicholas, could you also share a little bit your view on this from the Exensia's perspective?
Absolutely. Thanks, first of all, for the invitation, for the nomination. Really excited to be here. Also, I realized that with our end-to-end AI-driven precision medicine platform, we are a bit the odd ones out here because it's not a product that is marketed directly to a patient or to a physician. Rather, it is a platform that is built to design new interventions, specifically design drugs in an autonomous fashion, faster, more efficiently, and with highest chance of success in the clinic. So how do we do this? There are two broad pillars. We, first of all, leverage artificial intelligence systematically across the entire drug discovery and development cycle, really from target discovery to testing new drugs to designing them. And the second one is we're really trying to put the patient first, put the patient at the center. And for that, we really have a very nifty technology to measure drug response directly in live human tumor tissues using high content imaging and AI, because we really believe that this is the closest we can get to a patient prior to running clinical trials and allows us to generate more relevant data than you can generate in a mouse. And I mean, we know how bad mice are as model systems. So why is this a breakthrough? Well, for the first time, our company really showed that it is possible to automatically design new drugs. We brought the first 3 fully AI automatically designed small molecules into the clinic. and it is extremely efficient. We've shown that we can boost the efficiency of discovery by a factor of 10. Rather than synthesizing 5,000 molecules, we can do 500. And we can cut the time by a fifth. This is a massive boost in productivity. And then we have really shown that by measuring drug response in live human tissues, we can bridge the gap between preclinics and clinics. We've shown this clinically, that patients treated with drugs prioritized by testing them in the live tissues have a higher chance of success. And now we are using this in our clinical research and preclinical research to prioritize the most promising candidates. In terms of indication focus, well, for the patient centricity, we work a lot with oncology or in oncology, because there the access to primary tissues is easy because they're cut out all the time. I mean, that's the disease that you want to get rid of. However, in the discovery space, really what we're doing is highly indication agnostic. I mean, the first 3 molecules that we brought into the clinic, 2 are in CNS, 1 is in IO. Our pipeline of 30 molecules is full of cancer, infectious diseases, virology drugs. So this really is generally applicable. And the reason why this is so important, this brings me to the unmet medical need, is because we have a productivity issue across the entire pharmaceutical industry, independent of the indication that we're looking at. 95% of the molecules that are brought to clinic fail. This drives costs to unsustainably high levels of 2 billion plus per new drug. There are patients who urgently need new treatments. And we believe really by smartly combining AI-driven design, really this concept of putting the patient at the center, and really turning what is a linear innovation process normally and an AI-assisted learning approach allows us to develop better drugs faster with higher chance of success. We have shown first proof points now, and now going into the clinic, we're really excited to also show this further down the value chain.
Wow, amazing. Michelle, how would you translate that into the decentralized trial section that you guys at Medable are really focused on?
So at Medable, we provide a technology platform that connects people all over the world to clinical development. And we specifically improve access, increase the speed of clinical trials, or reduce the timelines. And we've shown that, importantly, the use of our technology in decentralized clinical trials has a 13x return on investment for a phase 3 clinical trial. This was research that was just released by the Tufts Center for Drug Development. So I think, taking a step back, all of us are very passionate about improving the outcomes and lives of people and patients all over the world. For me, when I was a physician scientist at Stanford, I was really front and center to the challenges we face in clinical development around access. Patients who could come and see me, I was able to enroll in cutting edge investigational therapy for investigational medicines and cutting edge research for the diseases that I was treating, but many patients could never make it to Stanford. And we know this is a significant challenge, is access and geographic locations of sites. So since that time, I've been working to build a bridge that is technology that connects patients to research, something that has now become named decentralized clinical trials. And why I think this matters so much and what the unmet need is, we know only 3% of patients are even enrolled in a clinical trial. We know that over 60% of clinical trials fail because of failure to enroll and retain. And we know that the timelines are 12 years to bring a new drug to market and over $2 billion. So patients need access to investigational therapies. The world needs more approved therapies, and we need to bring technology leverage into clinical development, which is exactly what decentralized clinical trials are. What excites me is, you look at, say, I'm coming from Silicon Valley, you look at, say, silicon chips and Moore's Law, we see a significant, increase in terms of the steepness of the curve over time in the development of silicon chips. They're built faster, they're less expensive. When we look at the number of drugs approved over the last 10 years, we haven't even moved the number, right? We know that it's about 50, 55. That means that we're not bringing technology leverage to solve this problem. So I think that decentralized clinical trials, the work we're doing, the evidence around the 13x net present value or return on investment is the first time we're seeing a Moore's Law-like phenomenon in clinical development by really bringing technology as that bridge for patients into the process of building a new medicine.
That's amazing. Yeah, exactly. I think bringing the time down from clinical research and actually bringing better treatments to our patients at the end of the line, that's really what we all are trying to help out with some way or form. Michael, your AI diagnostic system, could you tell us a little bit more about, how it all fits in and what the unmet medical need was there? Michael, I think you're still on mute.
I didn't even put myself on mute. Hey, thanks for having us, and I'm very excited to be here. And as you heard, it's really exciting to hear that we all started with the unmet need rather than with the technology, and that's just great. I would say I would want to add to unmet need the health inequities that exist and that are hard to address, have been hard to address, lead to socioeconomic groups, racial minorities across the world having worse access to care, and that leads to worse outcomes. In our view, the way to especially get better access to high quality care to a specialist like me is to use autonomous AI, which means that the computer is fully autonomously making the medical decision. So the first unmet need we tackled was blindness and visual loss as a complication of diabetes, the most important cause of blindness. And patients, if just like with mammography, if they're caught early before their symptoms, you can still treat them well. And so the most important thing is to get everyone access to this retinal exam. And we do this by doing this in primary care where the patient is. So we bring the high quality diagnostic to where the patient is rather than have the patient come to a specialist. That requires autonomous AI, and I'm proud to say that we were the first to ever get an FDA de novo authorization for an autonomous AI in any field of medicine. And then we created essentially a new industry because we made sure that you can close a so-called care gap with an autonomous AI, that there was a CPT code, first time ever for an autonomous AI, and finally that there is now CMS and widespread payer reimbursement in the US for an autonomous AI making a decision by itself without any human involvement. And so that's a very exciting path, but more exciting is that what we set out to do, which is remove health inequities, improve access. We are actually proving that in randomized clinical trials. So a paper is coming out very soon, showing that yes, indeed, if you use an autonomous AI, you can literally remove health inequities, in this case, in Black youth with diabetes. So we are showing that what we set out to do is actually we're achieving, and not only in the US, but I just counted 4 different continents. We're either active, Europe, Asia, or we are in the middle of clinical trials to get this very exciting autonomous AI technology to as many patients as we can.
Fantastic. Wow. Simon, would you also be able to tell us a little bit about the clinical analysis software that you guys have put forward?
Sure, be delighted. Thank you very much for the invitation. In terms of our technology and the unmet clinical need, we are really tackling the huge shortages of radiologists, not just in the UK, but globally. In the UK alone, there's going to be 43% of staff vacancies for radiologist posts. And one of the key modalities that are used in diagnosis globally is the chest X-ray. Now, the chest X-ray is a very simple test, but actually a test with a high level of subjectivity. And 90% of misdiagnoses for lung cancer happen at the chest X-ray stage. So we've built a computer vision algorithm that assists both the radiologist and the healthcare system by looking at a chest X-ray and increasing the sensitivity of the first read in combination with the human read to get above expert reader level performance. So that at a national level means that we can increase the sensitivity and standardize the test and pick up an extra 22,000 lung cancers in the UK alone. At the same time, we can actually rule out normal chest X-rays. And we built an algorithm that has a level of error of 0.33%, which is 40 times better than an expert reader. So a real example of autonomous AI diagnosis, which we're trying to pioneer through the UK and build up its capability. But most of all is really about a technology that can be scaled globally. So you can have the same standardization of tests in the UK, in the US, or India. So this is a test where we believe there's over 1 billion chest X-rays performed per annum. So there's a great opportunity to scale this at the same speed and the same precision on a global stage and improve the human condition. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for sharing your views here. I would also love to learn a little bit more about where you see individually or as a group in a discussion phase, and let's do it in discussion phase. Where do you see the next wave of innovations trending within this digital technology space? Where do you see that the next, big thing is where we should be keeping our eyes on very closely? And I see a couple of people already nodding. Michelle, you were the first one you jumped here into my eye. Maybe you can kick this off a little bit and everyone else can just join in on how you see this evolving from an innovations perspective.
Sure. I think it's exciting, the number of companies here that are leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think in general, this has been under leveraged in medicine. And I say that, coming out of Stanford, where we are, I think, at the cutting edge of some of the research on that front. But I do think that artificial intelligence will provide, and machine learning will provide, a new form of leverage. And one thing that excites me is I watched the Tesla AI Day, and this was just a couple of weeks ago. And what you find is say we're looking at autonomous cars, self-driving cars, the stakes are very high. Patients' lives, or our people's lives, I should say, are on the line. But we know that we need to innovate, and that we can do this safely if we do it in the right way. I think that the progress in self-driving cars is a good comparator and inspiration for us as an industry. I also think when you look at the self-driving car, they have to rely on artificial intelligence to solve the problem. So I've challenged our teams to actually say, what if we could only solve the problem this way? Because I think that, again, looking forward, this will be an incredible area of leverage to provide solutions for patients at scale that have even superiority to physicians, as we're seeing more and more. And I think it removes a bottleneck that physicians and clinicians, often pose. Me, myself, as a dermatologist, only 8,000 of us in the United States. So we need to look at how we serve patients and how we scale the delivery of medical care, both, of course, in clinical research, but also in the delivery of medicine day to day.
Amazing. Anyone else who wants to join in there?
I want to talk a little bit about workflow and implementing AI and autonomous AI in healthcare in general. Even though many of us, some of us are even physicians, complain about how slow healthcare can be, it was in fact the first to adopt autonomous AI. There's still no self-driving car. There's now a self-driving tractor, but it's about it for autonomous AI that is available to the public. But there is a AI diagnostic that is autonomous, right? And that is widely reimbursed and FDA approved and legal. So that's very exciting. And I think part of the reason why is because we started with ethics. If you start with an ethical framework, making sure that you can measure what you say about things like patient benefit, absence of racial bias, improvement of outcomes, autonomy of the patient, data usage. If you address these upfront, all stakeholders in the healthcare system became comfortable with this type of, an autonomous computer making a diagnosis. And I think that led to the relatively fast adoption. So with that start, you can, you're already seeing that you will see many more AIs. We make some of them. We have other AIs in different diseases in different parts of the body, as well as others. And you all see them now rapidly getting to healthcare, implemented in the workflow and solving these problems with unmet needs and access that we talked about.
Amazing, yeah.
Just building on that point from Michelle and Michael, autonomous AI diagnosis in the UK still requires 100% human audit. And I think that's one of the things that is a huge challenge for all of us, is that the amount of evidence that we produce in a lot of cases far exceeds that of a pharmaceutical. Yet we have to do that. We're compelled to do it. But the opportunity for autonomous AI diagnosis is very much here and now. And I think post-COVID-19, I think that's accelerated the adoption of these technologies. And I think one of the key things here, and listening to all the fascinating technologies, is, technologies such as mine pick up early stage lung cancers, things that are routinely missed. Now, that could be very interesting to a decentralized clinical trials type of solution as well, or it could be very interesting to a mammography-based solution. And I think actually the collaboration is actually probably more between us as a unit, interesting after hearing some of these great technologies. But that's where I see the future of this sort of stuff going on.
I mean, speaking of autonomy, I mean, our vision is to drive towards autonomous drug design eventually. I mean, still we need to have compounds synthesized by hand and so forth. But really, the future, we envision a future where really computers can design drugs, test drugs in an integrated, automated fashion. And there it's less about the regulation because in the end, the molecule will go through the same paths as a molecule that is designed by hand. When I think about the clinic and where I kind of see enormous opportunity for digital systems, in particular in helping us interpret complex data sets, is to really transform precision or what we currently call personalized medicine to truly individualized medicine. I mean, when we think about cancer care, for example, we say we treat an EGFR mutated lung cancer patient with an EGFR inhibitor, and we call this personalized medicine. It's really a stratification of patients into a smaller group, but for them it's all size fits all, where I really hope and see opportunity for technologies then even within these groups, make them smaller and smaller and smaller until we come to an N of 1 and can really tailor therapies to individual patients. And I mean, we've shown with our drug testing platforms and tissues that this is in reach and this is possible to really find individually effective drugs for patients, as shown in the EXALT-1 study, where really we prioritized highly individualized therapies to patients and saw improved progression-free survival and late-stage hem-onc in 50% of patients. So that's really why I hope that technology will be driving us in the future.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I can piggyback on kind of to what Michael and Simon were talking about as we talk about AI workflow and how that incorporates into patients and clinicians' lives. I think we've done a pretty good job. You know, we're in over 1,200 centers in the US and hospitals, but now you need to bridge the gap between the providers that are using it, but also the life science companies that are on the forefront of that innovation, whether it's the pharmaceutical and med device companies who are bringing innovation in and helping to guide and adopt patients through these novel therapies. So, you know, we've worked really hard to build our platform for clinicians and really being that patient-focused healthcare company. We're now partnering with life science companies for those patients who have rare disease, misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, hard to diagnose, or, you know, really trying to drive patients into clinical trials where there is a huge problem in healthcare right now because we don't have enough clinical trial staff to get patients into the appropriate ones. And I think as you pull those arenas together, which typically haven't always intersected at a great point, I think that's where AI can really innovate, connecting those patients that have long treatment pathways, don't get diagnosed appropriately or misdiagnosed, and bringing in the innovation and guiding them to these novel treatment therapies much more quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Mathieu?
Yeah, I think the future will actually be how well we can orchestrate the use of this technology with the human beings around. I mean, being the physicians, the other carer, the patients, because all this great technology is nothing if it doesn't benefit. And to benefit, it needs to be adopted and needs to be adopted by humans. So I won't dwell on the autonomous vehicle. I will talk about the autopilot in the plane. It took a long time, but did you know that when you cross the Atlantic, 90% of the flight, you are actually being piloted by the machine, not by the pilot, and the pilot cannot touch the commands. So, but it took some time. It took a dialogue between the industry and the pilots until they realized that actually it was good for everyone. So I think back to what Michael was saying, the ethics, I don't see AI being used widely and autonomously as we sometimes hear. I don't see the disappearance of radiologists very soon. I think it's a matter of working intelligently between the AI and everyone benefiting from it.
Yeah. So really just improving our own work and making sure that anything that can actually be, made autonomously and which is based on, repeatable processes and things like that, that we can really just complement that with our own human intellect and just make ourselves better and more productive at the end of the day.
Yeah, autonomy will come when it comes. We cannot say, oh, we have to be autonomous AI and then push it to people. We have to work with the workflow, with caring about the personalization for the patients. We have to really listen to what clinicians, we're conducting a vast market survey at the moment, and what radiologists are telling us what they're missing on the tool is sometimes very, very small things we thought were not important, but they're important for them. And being able to incorporate all these elements in a workflow is really important, because if this is a tool they trust and like using, they will use it more, and then the patient will benefit. Not if we push hard and say it must be autonomous and fire all the radiologists. That won't work.
Yeah, just building on your point, Matthew, I think one of the things that we did a lot of patient involvement surveys, and they were very surprised that AI was not being used in clinical practice. Their view was, actually, it's used everywhere else. Why is it not being used in medicine? And we fed that back to the clinicians, and there was genuine surprise at the clinical level that actually the patients had a more positive view of AI than the clinicians. And I think a lot of us have been fighting against the clinical skepticism of potentially these products. But I think we forget that the patient actually needs some of these products and will probably push a bit harder than the clinician does. So I think the age is coming, and I think very much cost is one of the biggest issues. In America, it's a huge cost. I think they're going to spend $4.5 trillion on healthcare. In the UK, 40 pence in every pound is going to be spent on healthcare by 2024. We can't afford that as a nation, and not many people can. So I think there's a real crunch point coming for this type of technology, and it might happen sooner than we think.
Can I take up the equity aspect, because it relates to what Simon was saying about essentially reimbursement and saving cost? That I think autonomous AI is not directly replacing a retina specialist like me. What happens is that 20% are getting the care they need and 80% never see a retina specialist. For the same amount of spending, you can now have 100% covered. I think that's the crucial thing about autonomous AI is indeed not displacement, but rather enhancing what we all want, which is high quality healthcare for everyone. And then only those patients who really need someone like a retina specialist like me or a radiologist can go there and finally, end up with the care they deserve.
I agree. I fully agree with you. It's about, I think, efficiency and allowing the physicians to focus on the hard cases where really their expert knowledge is needed. We're seeing something similar. By using automation, by using AI, we're not abolishing the medicinal chemists to get all together, but we are like other types of jobs in the pharmaceutical industry. But as a relatively small company of less than 500 people, we are managing a pipeline of almost 30 drugs at the moment, because with much fewer resource investment, we could get to that level of productivity. And if the same works in the clinic, I think that's amazing.
Any other thoughts to share? Okay, I actually have one extra question for everyone, and I'll just go by everyone individually again. If you would have to, go back to your 5 years ago to yourself and tell yourself, what is the biggest challenge that, with knowing what you know today, what is the biggest challenge that you want to make sure that you would have known upfront and would have been aware of, if we push through, this is the end result that we're getting to? What would be that advice and that big challenge that you would warn your previous self about? And maybe Jamie, I'll start with you. What would be the advice and the challenge that you would like to tell yourself about?
Yeah, so I think, as we went into the space and we started realizing very quickly the impact that we were making on patients and clinicians, we were so focused on validating the AI for how it performed and what did the modeling do and what did it look like. And we kind of had this blind spot to really focus on that real world evidence of how it was impacting patients, right? So what was actually happening in the real world that then would help us lead to the reimbursement strategy of making sure we had that recognition and going ahead of CMS, showing these outcomes. So we've learned and evolved now that we're bringing new products to market and into this space. We really focus on what is the actual impact in the real world on the patient and the clinicians, so we can get ahead of it. And I think if we can all do that in this space, it will really help us drive even further along reimbursement mechanisms. How do we get recognition to get this reimbursed and help support the adoption even broader throughout the world? So I think that was our big one. Now we have over 30 plus publications in the real world showing clinical outcomes and impact. So would have liked it a few years earlier, but I'm happy that we got there.
Amazing. Yeah. Ashkan, what about you? What would be your, the biggest challenge that you would have liked to know about upfront, and what would be the advice for yourself? Ashkan, I think you're still on mute.
I think at this point, as soon as we start developing a product, right away with the product plan, any type of validation and development plan, we think about the regulatory strategy as well as potential reimbursement strategies, essentially who's going to cover the cost. So 5 years back, unfortunately, we were not doing that as one of the very first steps of our developments. And that would be, I guess, my advice or lesson learned. Now, from the very beginning, as I mentioned, we have the development plan, and then right away we look at what's the regulatory strategy to clear this from by FDA and other regulatory agencies, as well as reimbursement strategy. So I think it's extremely important to have those two in mind from the very beginning and plan for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great advice. Nicholas, what about you?
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about that. I think looking backwards, one of the key learnings was if people tell you that something is impossible, that you're on the wrong track, you probably are on the right track, and you should continue pushing. And I saw this for the primary tissue platform that I started developing 6 years ago, where people told us, this has been tried before, never ever works, and hasn't worked in the 1980s, so why it should work now? And we proved the naysayers wrong. We ran the first clinical study where we could prioritize highly effective therapies for individual patients by measuring drug response in their live tissues. And the way how we did it is we went for single cell resolution, and this was enabled by AI. Similarly, I think for our CEO, Andrew Hopkins, it took 10 years from the foundational paper in Nature to the first AI-designed drug to enter clinical trials. And I'm sure a lot of people said this is never ever going to work. And I think now nobody is debating that AI-supported drug design, drug discovery is changing the industry actively. So, note to myself 5 years ago, keep pushing when people tell you that this is never ever going to work, because I think true innovation really needs to, attack the problems or tackle the problems that seem insurmountable and unsolvable.
Yeah, amazing. Great advice. Simon, what would be your advice to yourself, and what was the biggest challenge that you would have liked to know about upfront?
I'm a second-time entrepreneur, so apparently that's very rare these days. So probably would have said to myself, don't do it. It's going to take a long time. But I think that's the main thing. It does take a lot longer than you think. And I was 5 years ago, it was extremely exciting to get involved. And we all thought we would do it in 3 years. Well, that's definitely not true. So I think it's about patience is what I'd say. And I would actually tell myself, whatever you plan, double it, because it does take a long time to change people's minds. And I think all of us here have been right up against that issue. But eventually, when you do get to that top of the mountain, my biggest piece would be to say that make sure that you don't have to go back down and up again for product 2. You should be able to build up off that. So it's about patience. And with this type of innovation, if you do know you're doing something that's completely unique, such as fantastic technologies here, and it can't be done elsewhere, then you're on the right track. So just keep that in the back pocket for patients.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, what about you?
I think similar themes to what others are saying, which is, don't let anyone telling you that it's impossible dissuade you. I remember many times we were just told no one will, pharmaceutical companies will not use this approach. You will never get a sponsor client. I was told by some of the top venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And what's fascinating is not only has this been used by biopharma, I think this is the next big strategy for the majority of clinical development. And it's, due to really the validation research. So I think, just, continuing to remind my former self to stay in the game and to, I think that Nicholas said it well, which is, the problems that seem impossible to solve are the problems we should be working on. And, that's what I think meaningful life's work is, whether you're an entrepreneur, a scientist, a doctor. These are the problems we're solving, and we need to continue to focus on solving them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Michael, any advice that you would have given yourself, or challenges that you would have liked to have known about up front?
I look at the color of my hair. It wasn't the color when I started 30 years ago as a neuroscientist working on this problem. I maybe have not foreseen all the hurdles, but on the other hand, I went into the FDA 10 years ago and say, hey, I want a computer to make a diagnosis. And that was a hurdle, but we overcome it. I think more importantly, the biggest lesson that was more confirmation that you need to work with all stakeholders in the system. And that in this case means patients, physicians, other providers, payers, meaning, insurance, regulators, Congress, in this case in the US, bioethicists. If they're all comfortable, it can go very fast because I mentioned it again, it went so fast in healthcare compared to other industries. I'm still excited about that. Yeah. So it took a big chunk of my life, but definitely in healthcare, it's going surprisingly fast. And I think we will see many advancements in the coming years. It's just a very exciting time, as you can see from the other companies here.
Yeah, absolutely. Mathieu, what about you?
I think I will advise myself to do what we did, to be very close to the users and the clinicians who will use it in the end, not necessarily the academics, but the ones who are really benefiting, but also be bolder and go faster and talk to the patients. I think I was very intrigued by what Simon said, that patients are actually more ready than the doctors to adopt. So I'll certainly follow that. I think that's a piece that could have made us move faster and maybe lift some of the resistance we see amongst the radiologists today.
Yeah, amazing. I'm quickly taking a peek at the chat to see if there are any open questions from our audience. If there are any, I don't see any immediately. If there would be any questions from the audience, you can still submit them, of course. As we have about 10 minutes left, I will be, and we don't have specific questions, I have maybe a final challenging question for our team here, for our audience. If we look at, how fast industry has been changing, especially in the last couple of years with COVID and things like that, and how fast also AI has really been taking over in this space, is there anything in particular that that you would expect, that we should be expecting to see within maybe 5 years from now? We look back at what would you have given yourself as advice 5 years ago, but what would you hope to see maybe 5 years from today? And what would you hope is going to be something, that the Galien Awards Committee can be reviewing in 5 years from now? And Mathieu, I'll start with you again. You went last, so we'll just take the other round again.
It's difficult what they would see in 5 years. I mean, who can predict really? I don't know. Maybe finally an AI that can interact with the patient is not really confined into the hands of the scientists and the doctors, but something that's really open up. I don't know how, but I think not just including the patients. Well, we have it in mind, and we try to communicate with them, but trying to be even more inclusive from the word go, and making sure that they contribute directly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a different way to approach it.
Yeah, I think that's something interesting to look forward to. Michael, anything that you would hope that we would be seeing, 5 years from now?
Yeah, I already mentioned we expect to bring many other AIs to market, autonomous AIs. But more importantly, I think we're at a very important inflection point. So on the one hand, if we do this well, it will continue to grow exponentially, I think. But there is a lot of concern about AI right now in Congress and other places, specifically about racial, ethnic, and other biases in AI. And we have seen this in gene therapy, and I always give this example that gene therapy was on a great path in the 90s. Some unethical experiments, trials happened, young people died, and it was shut down. And so I always worry that if we don't do this right, if we don't take these ethical frameworks into account, show impact on evidence, impact on outcome, show impact on equity, show that we don't have these biases, in the AIs we build, make sure that we address the concerns that are coming from everywhere, patients, physicians, everyone, then it will go right. But if we fail on this, there are already studies showing that patients have been harmed by AI. And so we need to do this right. And as an industry, we need to do this right. And I think that's the crucial thing to deal with in the coming 1 to 2 years. If we solve this quickly and we do all right, then it will go exponentially, like I mentioned. So very important and very exciting time right now.
Yeah, exactly. I love also the fact that you're bringing up health equity there, and how that is really going to be even more important towards the future.
Yeah, you need to show evidence, not just talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to predict, in 5 years, but I do think that, we underestimate how much the person who's dealing or living with a condition wants to take matters into their own hands. And we put a lot of barriers in front of people being able to, be a self-advocate and to drive their health forward. So, I am hopeful that AI and just healthcare in general will be able to leverage the motivation that people have on their own health. And, technology will really will be a facilitator to that access, which, the common human-led system just isn't fast enough. It takes too long. People's diagnoses are missed, diseases advance. When people are interested in clinical trials, they're not able to gain the access they need to have the opportunity or option. So I think we underestimate how motivated patients and people are, and that if there were better tools to give them the power to drive their health forward through AI or just technology as a facilitator, I think we would improve healthcare outcomes worldwide. And I don't think that we need the barriers in every case that the healthcare system imposes. And what people don't really realize is a lot of these are due to financial incentives around established ways of working. It's not necessarily just about, patient safety, which we would all say is critically important. But the financial barriers to the established ways of working, I see this firsthand in the United States. Those are things that we need to put secondary to the patient outcomes and get the technologies that are impactful and helpful into the hands of the people who need them most.
Yeah, amazing. Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, what I hope to see in the next couple of years is an increase in the diversity and quality of, in particular, clinical data that is available. I mean, we all know AI depends on high quality data sets, and in many areas, I mean, we are creating our own data sets because what is out there either is not fit for purpose or is not high enough quality or not good, well enough annotated. And I think a lot of the data that is sitting out there just can't be used because it's not in the right format, not in the right quality. And I really hope that we will not only continue innovating on building new AIs, but also think about how we can collect data more smartly, how we can collect it in a higher quality. We're thinking a lot about this, how to manage data in our own company and where to get it from. But I really hope that really there will be a massive push.
Fantastic, yeah. Ashkan, what about you?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I guess I'm going to separate this two questions. I think what's needed, in my view, to push the industry forward, and then what I hope to see in 5 years. I think with regard to the first question, what's needed to push the industry forward is, I would say one of the key barriers is more robust reimbursement, essentially an insurance coverage. So, you know, for example, if I look at remote monitoring or using digital therapeutics, essentially the current reimbursement that's currently available in the United States makes it very attractive for specific applications, but not broadly, which has, I think, significant impact on the use of these technologies, which in turn would improve access, would provide better care, and would, at the end of the day, reduce the cost of the healthcare systems. Now, in 5 years, obviously, I'm hoping to see several, or if not many, FDA approved and validated digital health technologies, whether they are driven by AI for imaging or whether they are for remote monitoring solutions or facilitating clinical trials.
Amazing, yeah. Simon, what about you?
I think from my perspective, I agree with everything the other panel members have said. I think, but from our perspective, it's really about being able to standardize this test at a global scale. So it doesn't matter if you're in India, you're in America, you're in England, you will get the same diagnosis with the same speed. And that, I think, if we can achieve that as a group, is truly quite a remarkable thing to do. So if we could do it in 5 years, it'd be even more remarkable. But either way around, that's really sort of where we would like to be, because at the end of the day, I think everyone has to realize that post-COVID, you know, the sort of the modern economies are going to bounce back, but the other economies are not. And so therefore, there's going to be huge global healthcare disparities, and we've got a great opportunity to fix that. So I think that's our job.
Amazing. Jamie.
Yeah, so a lot of what I would say has already been captured, but I think one of the most important things that I would love to see is the reimbursement mechanism. So all of these great companies that we're sitting here with right now and are doing amazing things, how do we come together to really help drive that back to the, you know, scale of economy and what the health systems are facing, and the ability to adopt technology and solutions is quite challenging because they don't have the ability to offset the cost, and they are so focused on labor cost right now, right? So if we can pull together and really partner with, you know, industry and regulatory and government, and pull together a way that this can be reimbursed, because we know that it makes an impact on patients, right? And we know that it brings better patient outcomes, which then lowers cost of care. And I think if we think about 5 years from now, in a perfect world that I would love to see, and some of the things we're focused on at Viz is like, no matter where your point of care is into the healthcare system, this AI is really working on the data that is being processed, whether that's EHR, whether that is imaging, ECGs, echoes, and really helping to guide patients on that care pathway and get them to the right provider to get the right treatment at the right time, which there needs to be some evolution and changes in the way that healthcare is regulated because of some of the older ways that things have been done. It's hard to run AI, identify something with a patient, and go to that patient and make sure they get connected to the right specialist in a meaningful way. So I think that's something like we're focused on, and I think that other AI companies will continue to focus on bringing it, you know, to the forefront of patient care.
Yeah. Well, with this and all of this amazing advice and things to absolutely look forward to, I would love to thank everyone here on this call, all of my panel members, for this amazing discussion. I learned a lot from it. I hope you all did too. Now, just to finish it up a little bit, this webcast is also available on the Galien Foundation's homepage. And as a small reminder to everyone on the call, on Thursday, we have the Jubilee Forum starting at 7:30 a.m. And later that day at 6:30 p.m., we have the presentation of the 2022 Roy Vagelos Pro Bono Humanum Award, followed by the Galien Awards dinner, both of which are held at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. So thank you all so much for joining me here today, and I wish you all a very pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Goodbye all.
Thank you.
Bye.